London. Welcome everyone wherever you might be, whether it's freezing or whether it's actually quite warm. But yeah, we had such a lovely week last week, didn't we? So we were quite spoiled. So
We were.
yeah.
You need to do the slides, sorry, because you're
Yes, let's get going. So, welcome everybody to this week's Live Well Live webinar. We are members of the Lifestyle Medicine team here at Boots Online Doctor, and it is as ever our pleasure to be here with you and to support you on your weight loss journey. And today's webinar is no different. We are here to talk to you all about stress management and how that really impacts your weight loss journey. It's one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine, and it's a really important one to talk about for overall health benefit going forwards. My name is Dr. Samantha Weller-Pilley. I am one of the team. I'm a GP, a yoga therapist. I teach meditation, and I'm a coach and author. I'm really passionate about managing our health holistically, and really excited to be with you here today and to be joined by my colleague Ruth.
Hi, everyone. For those who've not met me before, I'm Ruth Taylor. I am the nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor and also a registered nurse and health and wellness coach. And really, like Sam, absolutely love being here with you on the webinars. It's our opportunity to talk to you about the things that we know really make the difference to you on your weight loss journeys. And if you stay tuned and follow the advice, we know that it can make such a significant difference to your long-term progress and also to the ability to keep that weight off. Just so you know, you don't have to be on a weight loss medication to join the webinars. You can be. We generally will not take specific personal questions, but we will take very general questions. So please, if you've brought any questions, pop them into the Q&A box. And we're just going to ask you a couple of questions, as you know, during the webinars. We're interested to know whether you've been here before. If you've not been here before, we'd love to know what inspired you to come along for the first time. I don't think we've got that. So please do pop that in the chat box or put that in a Q&A message or send us a message if you want to. And we would just be really interested to know what made you decide to join today. We've also got a series of podcasts that we created that we're keen for you to join and listen to. So we'd also be interested to know whether you've been along or listened to any of those. That may be something that we're able to create a few more of if there's enough interest. Great. I think that's everything. We're joined today, thank you, by Adna, who is here to support us with all technical queries or all sharing things that we need to share, documents that we might want to share with you. So thank you so much for being here. Adna, it's great to have you on board.
All right, so let's get cracking. Thank you for answering about the webinar attendance. That's really helpful for us to know how we can help. The Q&A box is open, so if you've come already with questions about the weight loss journey, it doesn't have to be related to stress. It can be about anything, and we will do our best to answer you. We just can't answer very specific health-related questions. It's not appropriate in a public setting, so we will aim to do our best for you and answer your questions. So, um, what is stress? I think we all have a pretty good idea of what stress is. We've listed just a few sources of possible sources of stress that you might experience in your life. Have a think about it for yourself. Where does stress impact you? How on a scale of 1 to 10 does it impact you? What are your triggers? And how do you manage it? Importantly, what do you do? Sometimes we kind of stuff it down and we kind of it sort of erupts in a different situation later in the day or later in the week. Have a think about what you do at the moment to manage, stressful situations. The past few years, of course, have been particularly stressful, perhaps for you, but they certainly have been very uncertain for most of us, I'd say, with the pandemic and lots of life-changing events in the world. Um, but what we know now from lifestyle medicine, from lots of research that's gone on, um, we know that if we don't find ways to manage our stress by building our resilience to that stress in the first place, and also finding ways to blow off steam, to really release that stress, to really get back to our true natures, then it can really impact many areas of our lives. So it's really key to build those strategies to help develop and cultivate that resilience so that we prevent it from negatively impacting our physical health and our emotional well-being, which we know how, play into that weight loss journey also. We're really going to focus on that today, the influence of stress on weight, and we're going to explore some techniques to help you really to stop allowing that those stress hormones impact the weight gain. Okay. Um, we know that, for example, if we are very stressed and we don't have ways to um, let off steam, to manage our stress, to really build in relaxation into our lives, it creates this overactivation and chronic activation of our sympathetic nervous system. That's our fight or flight nervous system, which we probably have all heard of. And that can lead to fatigue, to poor sleep. And what we also know now is that that state can cause increased snacking and increased hunger over the long term. So you can see how we're going to talk a bit more about this, how that could impact your weight loss journey. Oh, Ruth, you're muted.
That's better. Perfect. Sorry about it. Yeah, we've got a poll to share with you in a minute, all about what happens for you when you're stressed. And I think it's a really important point that we need to just really start tuning in to thinking about what's going on for ourselves. It's not about anyone else. This is about you. We're here in a group, but really this is about what's going on for you. So have a look at the poll. This is completely anonymous. We don't know who's answering. So we know whether you've answered, but we don't know who's answering what. So do have a look at the poll. That should be shared with you now. So we know that stress is something that really makes a difference to our weight management, but also to how our body carries fat. Something that we all experience from time to time. There is a lot of stress going on in our worlds, I think, as Sam's already said. But the demands, when we're experiencing the negative effects of stress, because a small amount of stress can sometimes be really positive. So let's not forget there are sometimes good things that come out of stress. But when we have too many demands upon us, which exceed our capacity to cope, then that puts us in the sphere of stress, potentially having a bit of a less healthy impact on us. It can start spilling over into our emotions or into our ability to cope. We might feel completely overwhelmed. And when that happens, we know that a lot of people who have a funny old relationship with food can have a little bit more difficulty in terms of staying on track with healthy eating. And that will put you right smack back into the problem of possibly having a higher risk of gaining weight and also an increased risk of visceral fat. And we know that one of the things that happens when you are stressed is you'll have a high amount of cortisol that will be produced by your body. Sam, I think you're going to talk about that in a bit more detail in a minute, so I'll leave that with you. But we know that one of the things that most of us will do, and I can put my hand up to this 100%, is reach for those high fat, high sugar foods. It's just something that we do. Maybe it's a very learnt response, is maybe something we're taught in childhood, that when we're upset or stressed or agitated or things haven't gone well, we've almost learnt to soothe ourselves with food. We know that dietary intake of certain vitamins and minerals have been really found to help our stress response. So we're going to talk a little bit more about those in a little while. But we also know that a lot of stress can really impact our mood, also our weight loss, and can be a barrier to our ability to lose weight. If we have high levels of cortisol, that can cause quite an issue in terms of stuck weight, not being able to move past a certain point in our weight loss journey. So being overwhelmed by stress, we know can trigger overeating, because it can be a pleasurable diversion from the issues that are making you feel stressed. And the research tells us that the foods that we tend to crave more when we're stressed are those junk foods, the high sugar, the high fat foods, the high salty foods. And we almost risk learning to comfort ourselves always with food when there's something going on that's tricky to deal with in our lives, and we can become slightly emotionally orientated, so we can become emotional eaters. This can be a learnt behavior. It's something that a lot of people we know can really be find quite challenging to overcome. And actually, it's not something that we talk about often enough, I don't think, in society. So it's almost like got an element of shame. There is no shame in this. We're not here judging one another at all. We're just here owning that this is a known fact and that this is something that many people do when they're stressed. They will eat perhaps the foods that they've been really working hard to avoid. And you might have them in your cupboards because they've historically been something you've put in your shopping trolley. It might be in your cupboard for other members of your family or people you live with. They're really challenging when you're feeling overwhelmed to sort of steer away from. So I think it's about also bringing your attention to whether stress is triggering those eating habits. So this is why we've had a look at this poll. Let's have a look, Sam, and see how everybody got on with the poll. I think it's a really key important point, isn't it? Oh, now you're muted.
I'm muted, sorry. There's some great tips that have been shared in the chat box as well about relaxation and moving the dial. So from that fight or flight into rest, digest, and heal. There have been suggestions of doing things you enjoy, going for a walk, doing some meditation, yoga. Fantastic. These are all really great ones to, I'm skipping ahead, but to move that dial from that stressed out high cortisol state. But as you say, let's look at um, the poll results. So most of us, not over 90% of us are aware that stress affects us and our weight loss journey. Um, Emotional eating is a big one, increased appetite and cravings. Also poor sleep as well and loss of motivation. Drinking alcohol as well is a good one to notice that and there was a good point made in the chat box as well. Bringing that light of awareness onto those habits is the first step, is to just notice without judgment, as Ruth has already mentioned. We're not here to judge ourselves harshly or other people. It's just to notice those patterns that may not be taking us down the path that we want to go down. Um, yeah, so let's see the rest of these answers. Um, and you've shared some top stress busting tips in the chat box. So thank you so much for those. Exercise is a great one. Distraction, doing something that you enjoy. And Ruth's got a good tip for you coming up on how to kind of build that into a habit, into having a sort of port of call when you need it. So I don't want, we talked a little bit about stress already. I don't want to labor the point, but just so that we understand the physiology behind stress and the negative impacts it can have on the body, so that we see the importance of those self-care practices to manage any sense of overwhelm and create good habits for life to manage this because things happen, life happens, politics happens, and our systems can become stressed. Okay. Um, We've mentioned stress causing weight gain, and some of this is hormonally driven. When we have chronic stress or stress that has been present for a long time and we just haven't known how to manage it, we release more of the stress hormone cortisol. This is a steroid hormone. It increases our blood sugar by stimulating the liver to release its glucose as fuel for the body for when we're stressed in that fight or flight state. And our primitive and incredible body thinks that we have to run away from the tiger. It also stops the pancreas releasing insulin, which is the hormone designed to use that sugar as energy or to store it, okay, or to basically augment your blood sugar levels. So, over the long term, those higher sugar levels contribute towards the development of insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, and in the short term, you'll notice more weight gain and that fat around the middle, more insulin. So basically, you're getting this visceral fat, so the fat laid down around the organs, and there's strong evidence to suggest that cortisol causes the fat deposit to be deposited around the organs of the abdomen rather than on the hips. And this distribution of fatty tissue is linked to heart disease and to stroke. So further on down the line, we're really looking at negative health outcomes when we've got more of that fatty tissue being deposited around the organs, which we can correlate to high cortisol levels, indicating high stress levels. Okay. We also know, as we've spoken about, that when we're stressed out, we tend to make less healthy lifestyle choices. We might be ordering takeaways, we might be snacking on biscuits, or whatever is our kind of go-to to kind of make us that sort of quick fix to try and elevate our moods. Okay, when we're in that habit, of course. And often when we're stressed, our sympathetic nervous system is kind of in overdrive. We might not exercise as regularly. We might not prioritize the time to cook fresh and healthy meals and opt for more processed or fast food options. Really, this is about bringing awareness and just noticing where patterns might be. Okay, so we want to really look at the way that stress plays a role in potential weight gain or difficulty losing the weight when we're doing all the right things, but we get stressed and then our habits are really tested.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I was sort of sitting here reflecting and thinking, how many days in a week do people not experience stress? Because for many of us, I think stress, there are some very sad stories in the chat box. So thank you for sharing. It's really tough. Life can be very tough for many people. We really do appreciate you sharing what's going on for you. But I just think if you know that stress is going to be part and parcel of your life, then actually really thinking about how you're going to manage those feelings that stress causes is really, really important, because it is just, a really challenging life can be very challenging. It can throw many, many challenges along the path. So thinking about this, I think it's really important for us to actually take some sort of action to help take some control. Much easier said than done. This isn't a quick fix session. This isn't, okay, let's think about it and it's all going to fall into place. It's like every lifestyle change that we talk about in our webinars or in the information that we share with you is about practice. And the first step in stress management is actually recognizing the stress is getting in your way, that actually it's controlling you rather than you're controlling it. And actually, we all have a choice. However tough life is, we all do have a little bit of choice. And I don't say that glibly at all. The first step in all of this is understanding the things. Somebody put a comment like this in the chat box, but the first step is to understand what your triggers are. Is it something at home going on? Is it something at work going on? Are there friends? Are there families? Is it that the wrong food in the house is the trigger? It's too easy to reach for it. Is it that you're just completely overwhelmed? Is it that you're not taking any time for yourself because you're doing something for everyone else all of the time? Who have you got around you that you can lean on a little bit for support? So there are many signs that you might be experiencing too much stress. So things like having difficulty concentrating, having headaches, having cold hands, having a nervous stomach, clenched teeth. You might even be sitting, holding yourself in a very rigid way or feeling very tensed up. But you may be doing that so regularly, you might not even be able to recognize that that's how you're holding yourself. You might feel a bit fidgety or on edge. You might be a bit irritable or a bit withdrawn. So these are many, many different symptoms that can be manifested from having too much stress. So it's time now to really start thinking about you, start thinking about what is triggering you, start thinking about how you're responding, and also let's think about what we can do about this. So we know that there are a few very simple things that we can do. So self-care is number one and really, really important. So putting in even 5 minutes just for you can make such a difference. We know that things like swimming and walking can produce some positive mood lifting endorphins. So that can help with relaxation. So can you find some time to do some of those activities, even if it's just 5 minutes in a lunch break in your garden? Focus on your health. Make it a very small, manageable step. It's like every other thing that we talk about, isn't it, Sam? That we don't want to be creating a mountain or putting something in our path that is unachievable. Depending on all of us, we'll have definitely something that we can achieve. Let's go for that. Is it that we need to move the biscuits? Is it that we need to stop buying those things that we eat when we are triggered? Is it that we need to put in a little bit of movement in our day? We're going to talk a bit about how to eat, but some of the things that we want to be thinking about are how we eat to balance our blood sugars. Really important. Lots of information on those that we can share with you in the 10-week weight loss plan, and also in the podcasts, and also in previous episodes of the webinars. We want to think about the activity in our life and what that can do to mitigate stress. Is it that you could do some meditation or some sort of mindful practice that can just bring some relief? Because that's what you need. You need a break in how you're feeling, and you need to really start looking after yourself. One of the things that we know that sleep can be really adversely affected, and we've got a whole webinar on sleep coming up, I think, next week. We know sleep is really important in terms of weight management. So we'll be sharing some top tips on how to get better sleep, but we also know when you're stressed, sleep can be really adversely affected. So lots to be thinking about here. Sam, do you want to
Lots.
talk us through?
Yes. So I'm going to talk us through just a little 4-4-4-4 breath work, box breathing.
Yeah,
This is such a simple thing, and it's got quite decent research behind it. This type of breath you can do anytime. You can do it on the bus. It's just in and out of the nose. You don't have to close your eyes. You know, it's a very simple thing, and it what we believe it does is it can really move the dial from that super stressed fight or flight mode, our adrenals really running the show, pumping out adrenaline, pumping out cortisol, to going more into that parasympathetic, that vagus nerve tone, calming down the body, reducing the heart rate, just bringing us back into that rest, digest, heal mode, because we're kind of on overdrive a lot of the time for some of us, and some of us are obviously going through some really, really hard stuff. And this is a simple thing that you can do at any time, any place. I used to do this before a home visit. I'd be sat in my car, sort of calming my nervous system before going into a patient's home. I'd do it sometimes between patients if I'd had a very difficult consultation and had to, you know, go through some tough news and then reset for the next patient. So I didn't bring that with me. It just gives you a bit of headspace. So anyway, we can try it together if anyone would like to join me or join us. Ruth and I are going to do it together. So all it is breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds on that full exhalation, and then breathing in again for 4 seconds. So we'll just do it together. So we're breathing in through the nose, 4 seconds, 2, 3, 4, holding, and that full inspiration for 4 seconds, 3, 4, breathing out for 4 seconds through the nose, 3, 4, and holding on that expiration, 3, 4, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, holding, 2, 3, 4, breathing out, 2, 3, 4, holding, 2, 3, 4, and breathing in, 2, 3, 4, holding, 2, 3, 4, breathing out, 2, 3, 4, and holding, 2, 3, 4, and coming back to breathing normally. You can do it with your eyes closed and just interiorize. Sometimes that feels nicer, if you feel comfortable to do that. It's a really nice exercise with good evidence behind it. So I warmly encourage you to practice that when you can feel, sometimes you can feel the physical effects of stress. Sometimes it's a racing heart. Sometimes you notice an irritability. Sometimes you notice that you start to feel a bit sweaty or your breath is speeding up. So starting to build up that self-awareness of how you're feeling. Because sometimes we're so busy, we just get on with it. We're so used to moving from task to task to task, and we're just constantly ticking things off our list and, mentally thinking about the next thing that we have to do. Sometimes we just need to take a little break.
Yeah, so Alexandria, you've just said you'd forgotten how good that was. Yeah, me too. It's really good to have that reminder, isn't it? Because you can sit in stress without even knowing that's what's going on in your body as well. So we
Yeah.
want just to quickly remind you about the key foods and why these are so important when we are under a lot of stress. We know that making changes to how we eat is not always the easiest thing to do, but we're here to guide you. So, protein, really important. These are the key nutrients to focus on when you're under a lot of stress, because what we know is that our bodies will utilize a lot of these nutrients a little bit more quickly than when we're not stressed. So, they're really important for us to put some extra focus and attention to. So, if it is that you're under a lot of consistent stress, really think about how you can add some of these foods into your diet on a regular basis. Really like that comment you made, Bridget, that actually watching what happens for you is the day before you react the day after to high stress the day before. How interesting. So it's not necessarily in the moment, it's more like a sort of delayed response that you're experiencing. So really helpful for us to be thinking about that. We're not all going to be doing the same thing. So protein. We talk about protein a huge amount in these webinars because actually all of the research is telling us how important protein is. So protein for everyone here, we want to be reaching that 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight over a day, up to around 1 gram per kilogram of body weight over a day. So that can be quite hard to achieve. Work out where you are now, see if you can eke it up. Try and get protein, a sort of small handful of protein in at every meal each day. That can really make a difference. We also want to be thinking about magnesium. We'll use a huge amount of magnesium, and we know that most of us are a little bit borderline insufficient in magnesium anyway. We have a higher need for magnesium when we're stressed. So things that we can do is we can eat these foods. Dark chocolate counts, avocado, nuts, chickpeas, beans, lentils, dark green leafy vegetables also have magnesium in. So really make sure you're boosting those on your plates. Have a little treat of some dark chocolate and just think it's doing me good. This is good. I can have some. Don't need to eat the whole bar. Dark chocolate is great because we actually generally need to eat less. B vitamins. We use a lot of B vitamins when we're stressed. Again, leafy greens, brown rice, the sort of whole version of grains generally have a little bit of B vitamin in. Legumes and eggs are also good sources. So thinking about those, as well as organ meats and some of the fish. So again, good. And vitamin C we get from citrus fruits and peppers, berries, broccoli. These are all the things we'll utilize loads of when we're stressed. We sometimes say if you really are stressed and really finding it hard to switch off and relax, for some people using a little bit of magnesium salts in a bath, like Epsom salts in a bath and soaking in them can be good, or a foot soak. You can also get some very nice magnesium oils that you can rub into your body, again, after you've had a shower or bath, because your pores are a little bit more receptive to those. We don't otherwise talk about supplements in these webinars just because, again, it's a myriad of confusing advice based on your medical condition, any medications that you take. So from a generic perspective, we don't go there. Sam, anything you want to add? Oh, sorry, you are muted.
Sorry, so sorry. I think you've covered it, Ruth. I personally really love Epsom salts bath. I think they're really super de-stressing and really, really helpful. And also, you get that magnesium that's actually re absorbed really well through the skin. So that's a really nice way to top up your
Yeah.
magnesium. So maybe before bed is quite a nice one to do. Um,
Somebody asked if you can check your magnesium levels and by a test. I think the most efficient way of doing that is with a blood test, which is looking at your red blood cell magnesium level. And that isn't necessarily what would be looked at in a standard blood test. So you'd have to be thinking outside the box in terms of that, just in terms of the active magnesium level. Yeah, just a quick pick up on that.
yeah. No problem. If anyone would like to share in the chat box, if you've got any ideas from today's webinar, what you might be implementing this week, do let us know. Um, it's it- we've gone through a lot, and I think stress is often overlooked on a weight loss journey. We don't talk about it that much in conventional sort of weight loss circles, but it is such a important point to make because this isn't just a weight loss journey. This to us, this is also a health journey, and to all of us, I think anyone that's here is interested in their health long term. And this is what we're really talking about. And stress plays such just there's just more and more evidence of what a key role stress plays in development of all sorts of metabolic illness that we do not want to suffer with in the future. So it's really a good idea to start thinking now where can I get the support that I need? How can I support myself? How can I get self-care into my day every day? Because we all need it every day. Can I get some time to myself, even if it is to like listen to my favorite song or, you know, get some sunshine onto my face or some light or at least some fresh air. Um, it's really vital for our well-being, and more we know how important well-being is to our ongoing functioning and to get all those things done, to be more productive, to actually accomplish what we need to. It's very important to think about our resilience and our self-care.
Yeah, and I was just reflecting on also one of the things we haven't really talked about, but we talk about in this and other webinars is the physiological impact of that high cortisol, in terms of affecting how our insulin works in our body, creating a more greater risk of insulin resistance. So that's why the protein and eating and calming ourselves down is really important. And also in terms of our thyroid function, if we have high amounts of cortisol, then we're going to find it much, we'll have a sort of slight blocking effect on converting our inactive thyroid hormone to an active thyroid hormone. So, the effects are massive, really, and I think it's really important for us to be thinking about that.
Thank thank you for your comments in the chat box. The people are enjoying the box breathing. That's great. Yin yoga, fantastic. Very grounding. Super good for you as well. And cold water swimming, fantastic. Metaphorically and literally chilled. Very good. Self-care is not selfish. Very true, Ben. A bedtime routine. That's a really good aim, actually, to create a nice bedtime routine. And you can build in the box breathing as well. It's fantastic. Yeah. And yeah, some of us might have challenges like fibromyalgia to exercise more, but we do what we can. We do what we can and we work within our ability as we
Yeah,
as we are. And exercise is fantastic, but if we're talking about sort of stress release, maybe exercise is not your thing. Maybe it's more music, maybe it's doing a puzzle, maybe it's reading a poem. There are so many things that we can do to relax the mind and take us out of a busy pattern, like we get so busy and sometimes we just need a break in the pattern that we've kind of created for ourselves and just to do something different and have that brain space. Say, if we do something that's very logical and maybe very mathsy all day, can we have a break for something that's more creative and a bit more, expansive, that's different, and then go back to our amazing logical thinking and, sums or whatever it might be. But just as an example of doing something that you don't always do, breaking that pattern and using your amazing brain in a different way, because it is our brains that kind of get carried away when we're a bit stressed out and sometimes get a bit anxious.
yeah. And I
Okay.
was just thinking, just do what you can, because I think if you can't exercise, even if you stop buying the wrong foods or eating the wrong foods, or you go to bed earlier, or you breathe a little bit more consciously, or you bring in some anti-inflammatory foods to sort of calm inflammation down as much as possible in your body. There are many things you can do. So I think that's also really important mindset. Is also you're an absolute genius about this, Sam. So I'm going to leave it to you. But how we think about things, instead of framing it around what we can't do, let's all start framing it around what we can do, because I think also that creates a sense of positivity, which can really help to offset some of that stress as well.
Absolutely, Ruth. Absolutely. Just thinking about how we frame things in our minds, never
Mm.
mind what we say out loud, but that positive framing of what we can do, as you say. Um, There's some really good comments in the chat box. Ben wants to start playing tennis. How fantastic. Uh, real. Yeah. I think sustaining stress, I think it's just a matter of doing it regularly. It's not going to be a one and done. This is part of life, right? Like stress is part of life. We know that. And a little bit of stress is fine. It might motivate us. It might help us to get things done. But if it's constant and we're feeling weighed down, anxious, overwhelmed, we need to be able to put practices in that we can do over our day. And it doesn't, so that it becomes second nature. So for example, we can just bring in box breathing, even if we're watching TV or, we're boiling the kettle, we could be doing some box breathing at that time. If we're cooking dinner, we can go into our breath. We don't have to, we can stop everything and just sit and have 5 minutes of quiet. That's also wonderful. But sometimes, we literally are moving from one thing to the other. And, I know how it is, and I'm sure Ruth does as well, how life can get very full. Um, I hope that has been helpful. We're going to move on to the questions and answers. Our next sessions are coming up the next couple of weeks. We're talking about sleep next week, and the week after that, we're talking about yo-yo dieting, so breaking free from that cycle of weight gain, weight loss, weight regain, and that kind of yo-yoing that really can be so disheartening and can make us feel really, really low. We can break free from that cycle. It is not a foregone conclusion.
Mm,
So let's move. I'm going to close the presentation as we move on to your
brilliant.
questions.
Cool. And I was thinking, Sam, I got a question for you.
Mm.
I'll jump in there. So I'm just thinking if you're, I think on a day when you're not stressed, it's probably just as important to put in some sort of self-care practice. So it's almost like you're creating calm in your body rather than waiting for those moments to come along and then do something about it. It's almost like actually managing yourself over the long haul rather than waiting for those peaks. So
Yeah.
almost to offset the peaks before they even come along.
I would say have a regular practice if you
Mm,
can. If you can do sort of, I don't know, first thing in the morning, just, sit and close your eyes and do some box breathing for 5 minutes, before you even get out of bed. Like, how nice would that be to start your day with just something really relaxing, just to calm your nervous system before the day starts or before you go to bed? You know, I I think a gratitude journal, a gratitude practice is really powerful to kind of calm the nervous system and focus on the positive things before you go to bed. So, pick three things that you're really thankful for that day and just change change the pattern, because we don't want to go to bed, with all these stressed out thoughts, whizzing around our minds. You don't have to stop at three. You could do 10 if you wanted, 10 things that you're grateful for, and just to really notice how it makes you feel, how it takes you out of that stressed sort of frantic kind of mindset sometimes that we can find ourselves in when we've got our lists. Also, we've talked about in the past sort of, okay, if there are a load of things you need to remember, write them all down. Okay, write a list so it's ready for you tomorrow. But if it's 11 o'clock at night, you're going to bed. So, there's no point dwelling on all these things that you've got to remember to do. Write them all down. They're there. You can pick them up in the morning. It's not a problem. But then you have 5 minutes of breathing or gratitude or whatever you makes you feel in your body, grounded, present, ready for sleep, or ready for a new day. We're all different. We'll like different ways of doing it. But yes, Ruth, I think that's a long answer to a short question. Yes, I think a daily practice, whether it's a busy day or a quiet day, I think it's really nice to have something that kind of almost or something even bookends your day, just to have that
or even just something
coming
in the
back to
middle of the
yourself.
day as well, just to ground you back down if you can, if you've got
Mm,
that luxury or you've got the mindful space.
yeah.
So actually somebody else had asked the question too, so that's very lucky. It wasn't just me. So will stressful times be less stressful if you do it on a regular basis? So I think you've covered that nicely. So thank you for asking the question. That was in my head too. Got a variety of questions. Um, Cool. Do you recommend magnesium supplements? I think for the basis of the webinar, then we would recommend you to be looking at the sort of Epsom salts and the magnesium oil spray. If you wanted advice about a supplement, we would need to look at your case on a case-by-case basis. We can't cover that, unfortunately, in a webinar, just because of conflict in terms of any medications you may or may not be taking or your medical history. It's just not safe. So sorry to be disappointing on that one, but it's about keeping everyone safe here. Thank you.
So we've got a question here about making it through a plateau, which is unfortunately what we know as one of the stages of weight loss, that weight loss progress is generally not a straight line. That most of us will with when we're on a weight loss journey, we'll hit a phase where we're doing all the right things, and yet the scales aren't really moving, and we seem to be a bit stuck in one place, even though we're doing all the right things. One thing I would say is you might feel that you are stuck at the same weight, but if you do some measurements, for example, if you measure your waist or around your upper arms or thighs, you might notice that that's actually changing, and it's almost you're sort of changing inside. It might be not affecting the scales, but actually the body composition is changing. So you might be, um, switching more to muscle tissue. The muscle tissue and fat tissue percentage might be changing a little bit, and that can affect um, those measurements more than the numbers on the scales. So that might be helpful for you and keep you motivated. Also, a plateau is a really nice time in a way to just keep your commitment to the new habits that you have forged and the changes to your lifestyle, the changes to the way you eat, the way you sleep, the way you exercise, the way you relax, the way you're really managing this journey towards better health. So it's that opportunity. Remember that your plateau is where it's believed that your body is readjusting to a new set point. So the body is this the whole sort of ethos in the body is to keep everything the same, and that is called homeostasis. It's that sort of keeping all the levels of everything the same. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. Excuse me. Um, but and that includes our weight. So the body almost wants to keep us at the same weight because it's kind of got everything else um, kind of in balance to be at that weight. So when we start losing weight, the body has to readjust all the levels to that lower set point. Okay, so for a while it can feel like nothing is changing. I'm just stuck at this weight because the body has got that weight as your set point and everything else is adjusted to make sure you maintain that weight. But with time and persistence, and as you keep up those habits, you will break through it. And it's difficult to say. It's how long is a piece of string. I don't know how long it will last, but it can last a number of weeks. That can be quite frustrating. Um, but you will move past it because the body will then realize, oh, everything is okay. Oh, we can start changing. So one, notice that it's not just the scales, it's also the measurements. Those might be changing. Two, it's a vital part of the journey, and it's an opportunity for you to carry on the amazing habits that you've started to change, and the things that you've adjusted to support your journey. Um, and and think about the physiology behind it. Like it will shift. It's just going to take a bit of time. I hope
Yeah,
that's helpful.
very much so. I think so. Somebody's asking about distress techniques help for people who are genetically predisposed to feel stress more and who hold on to the stress hormones for longer. Absolutely. It's actually probably, if you're in that situation and you know that that is something that is relevant to you, I would say that actually it's even more important to have some stress
Oh,
practices in
absolutely.
place. The genes are what our bodies are created from, but actually there's another term called epigenetics, and epigenetics is the effect of our lifestyle on our genes. And actually the most influential aspect of what happens in our bodies or how our health is actually the lifestyle that we have, the food that we eat, the relaxation that we bring into our life, the stress that we expose ourselves to. All of those things are really the chemicals in our environment. There's a myriad of things, how well we sleep. So actually all of those factors are really important. If you've got sort of like a predisposition to being more finely tuned to stress, to experiencing stress in a more significant way, then actually creating some regular practices can help to prevent the downstream effect of all of that stress as well. Because, we know stress is very detrimental to our overall health. So we need to learn how we manage that in our bodies. Yeah, so yes, absolutely. Really make sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And I would just say if you know you have some kind of predisposition, it's even more argument for a regular practice, like
yeah,
something like yoga, maybe a longer practice if you can manage that, a longer daily practice, or you know, a longer time that's split into short bursts over the day of bursts of relaxation. But just it's even more important for you. And remembering that epigenetic expression is how we think as well. It's how you have influence over that too.
yeah,
Um,
very much so. Somebody's asking about how to help themselves not let stress affect their eating habits and their digestive system, and to sort of have the key in that in terms of maintaining their well-being. And obviously the person who's written this is finding it overwhelming. Um, we really know that stress can have quite an overwhelming impact on how you feel. And we know that for some people, stress can have a massive impact on how your digestion works. So I think it is about breath work, even actually maybe doing a little bit of breath work before you eat, taking time to eat and really eating slowly, and making sure you're eating foods that actually work for you and make you feel good, rather than foods that you die for when you're sort of got an emotional crutch type of effect from food. So it's almost maybe creating, somebody said they, about creating menu plans, making sure the cupboards are filled with foods that you can grab and eat that are going to feed your health rather than feed your stress. It sounds really easy, but actually I think the more intentions we put in place, change one thing at a time, it can make a huge difference. And if you're really noticing that it's creating havoc, then you just need to do all of the work that we've talked about today and just make it a daily practice. I think that's what you're saying is.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the question here about cortisol. What part does cortisol play? I try to manage my stress levels, but that doesn't make any difference. Okay, so cortisol is a stress hormone, so it tends to be released with you you can think about it as like adrenaline is released as like your primary, okay, the lion has just jumped out at you. The adrenaline is going to start flowing immediately as you run away. But cortisol is more of a chronic stress picture of having that sort of high cholesterol, cortisol level, sorry, and you get all the kind of the visceral fat deposition with that. You get the sort of interference with the insulin system, the higher blood sugar levels, sort of the more difficult to manage blood sugars with that chronic stress picture. You also get that more craving for more sweet, sort of highly palatable, snacky type foods, and your appetite is affected. So that's the role of cortisol. Um, really you can think about it as, this is cortisol is kind of the hormone that mediates all of these actions, and it's a result of what is going on in our external world, but also our internal world. Like how resilient are we? What is our grounding strong? Is our ability to sort of come back to neutral there? Do we know how to do that? Can we give ourselves the time? Can we take ourselves out of a stressful situation with our or with our, spending some time, some fresh air, just a pattern break, getting us out of that sort of spiral that can take us down.
Yeah, definitely. Somebody's asking about ADHD and how that might have an impact on binge eating and hunger levels.
Mm.
And I think from what I have read, I'm not an expert in this area at all, but what I've read is there is a strong association between binge eating and ADHD. And what I understand is that boredom has quite a strong role for people with ADHD in terms of eating. So actually creating different foods, bringing different flavors in, taking the time to perhaps create new menus occasionally. Rather, I think we all tend to be habitual in terms of the food that we buy, the sort of meals that we cook. So actually, one of the things that can help in your situation is to really mix that up and bring some variety and different flavors in and different foods in if you can. And also just maybe finding something that you can do to distract you from a binging moment, so maybe it is just going out and getting some air, or maybe it is phoning a friend or doing a puzzle on your phone, or whatever just gives you that distraction and catching yourself before it happens. I hope that helps. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting research. It is something we will hope in the future to do some more deep dive discussion about. Maybe will be a podcast at some time in the future.
Great. We've got a couple of tips from an audience member. Reducing coffee and alcohol was great for them. Perhaps that was to reduce stress. I think that's a really good point as well. We haven't mentioned, um, caffeine can be, it can give us a bit of a buzz, it can make us a bit jittery, it can make us a bit more anxious and add to our stress. Alcohol, we think of it as a bit of a stress reliever, don't we? Obviously, there's the calorie intake that we think of, but long term, we know it's a bit of a depressant for our mood. And in general, if we're having issues with stress, I wouldn't suggest using alcohol as a crutch. If that is something that we do, I know that it can be, but it doesn't have the it feels like it's helping at the time, but it unfortunately long term it is not, and that's quite clear from the evidence. Um, got a few comments in the chat box about plateaus. Um, yeah, they're frustrating. Agreed, but they are a part of the journey. So do think about body composition because it's quite a good when we're just looking at the scales, we can get a bit hyper focused on the scale.
Mm.
There's a lot more going on in the body than just changes in those numbers.
Yeah, somebody sharing quite a stressful family situation that has put her into a sort of sense of being on red alert a lot of the time with child with ill health problems. Yeah, totally can relate to that. And it is really stressful. And I think it is about just making a list of the things that you can do, finding one thing you can do every day, and maybe doing a bedtime practice just to calm you down. But, if you're monitoring blood sugars and you're really anxious about that, hopefully over time as things settle down, there will become an element of normality with a few sort of moments where it's more stressful, I'm sure, because it's not, we'll potentially have that as a problem for a while. But it's sort of about also normalizing your personal reaction to that stress and almost bringing some level of acceptance because it is a really tough space to be in. So we really appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, cool. There's a question about I can't even say it. Is that nicotine lozenges? And
It
whether they're
looks
going to
like it.
be, I guess, on the same level as tobacco potentially could be creating an element of blood sugar imbalance. I guess the lozenges are much less nicotine in those than in a cigarette. But what do you think, Sam? Depends how many you have, I guess.
Yeah, I honestly do not know, and I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I don't have an answer for you. I don't know if they can. It might be that you're quitting smoking is quite stressful. That would normally be your, probably, I absolutely salute you for looking to quit smoking. So that's something great you are doing for your body and for your health in the long term. But obviously, stressful if you normally would turn to a cigarette, and maybe the lozenges aren't really as relaxing for you as a cigarette would be. So I wonder if it's that. I'm sorry, I don't know much about nicotine lozenges themselves. Um, but yeah, I wonder if the process of quitting smoking could be a bit wearing.
somebody's asking about HRT, whether it can impact stress levels. I think again, it's very individual. I think all hormones work as an orchestra. That's the way that we sort of think about it. So if one hormone is out of balance, it will have potentially impact on your other hormones. So it is worth just actually looking at everything that's going on in your body and trying to create as much balance as you possibly can. So you sort of like look at you, look at what's going on for you on an individual level, both in terms of your lifestyle, what's going on in your wider life, and also then looking at what's going on in terms of your physicality, your health, the life stages that you're at, and actually just bringing down as many of the elements of the jigsaw puzzle as you can and just managing each of those, maybe one at a time. It can be quite overwhelming if you try and do too much, which again can add to the layers of stress, can't it, Sam? So it's about managing
Yeah.
it practically and, in a way that isn't going to drive you mad or make you feel even more overwhelmed. Yeah.
Yes. Are there any other questions in the chat box?
No, I think we're got lots of brilliant sharing. So thank you.
Mm,
Lots of
mm,
people who've been struggling with plateaus. So that was a really great question that somebody asked us. It's made everybody else who's in that situation have a good think and an awareness of actually it's possibly not as bad as I thought. And actually, I want to say, is a plateau your friend? Is it actually that your body is beginning to adjust for you?
mm,
Yeah,
mm.
again, we're
Oh,
not going to be talking about supplements for
yeah.
stress
Sorry,
management.
sorry about that. Adna, would you please share the link to sign up for the next webinars, please, so that there's a question asking for that. So we're generally here most Mondays, and also there. Adna's very kindly shared the podcast link as recorded last year is very relevant. We go through a lot of the things that we talk about on the webinar. Um, Obviously, the webinars are great because you get to ask your questions and we get to chat to you.
Yeah.
I think if there's no more questions, we will let you go
Yeah.
and enjoy the rest of your day.
And just to
Just
say, we are here most Mondays, and the bank holidays that are coming up in April and May, we're switching to a Tuesday to see how that goes for you. Maybe something that doesn't work, in which case we'll just avoid those weeks. But we're going to give that a go this time around and see how that goes.
yeah, great. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for your fantastic interaction and questions. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you, everybody. Um, and we will see you next week.
Thank you to Adna as well. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Adna. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.